Well, hello there, GNTC government class. I am hoping that this thing's working. It is, 7:27. Never a dull moment on top of, I guess that coronavirus stuff just got boring. So, on top of that, we get to wonder whether or not a tornado is going to hit. So hopefully when you're watching this on Monday, the tornadoes will have passed us by, and it was just kind of another near miss or something like that. At any rate, got to get this sucker done. So let's think about what we said about Congress prior to spring break. So the first thing we did the lawmaking process. A bill's got to become a law. Most bills don't become law. They got to go through all those committees, and you got the hearing, testimony, debate, amend, vote. Got that long process, and just kind of filters out so many bills to where it's a very small percentage of bills that get introduced that actually get passed into law. And that's kind of, it's been designed, it's been created that way over the years, but it kind of reflects the original idea of the founders that people don't really trust the government, don't want to make it too easy for the government to do things. So it's hard for a bill to become a law. All right, and then we looked at kind of the differences, kind of compared the House and the Senate. Remember it said the House is kind of it's kind of the cup. Everything gets all heated up there. They've got the 2-year term. They got to stay. It's the people's branch, the lower house. They got to stay popular. So when America's fired up, you kind of see that reflected in the House of Representatives. And you kind of saw that with impeachment maybe. And then the Senate's kind of the upper house, the more deliberative house. It's the saucer where things kind of go to cool down and slow down. It's harder to pass a bill. In the Senate, they've got the filibuster there. And so, it's the slower, more deliberative, kind of cool it off kind of body. So that's kind of the comparison between, the House and the Senate. All right, and so now we're looking at politics, and it's kind of going to be the last thing I think that I say about Congress. We'll move on to another topic, probably the courts. I guess maybe the media. I don't believe we've done media yet, have we? So that'd be a fun little topic. So on Wednesday, let's do the media. So we kind of try to go back and forth between something that's really political and something that's a government institution. So we'll do the media next time. I don't believe we've done the media. So we're finishing up Congress, and we're kind of looking at some politics in Congress. And so we've got this fact that's been around for a while, most of my professional career, that people don't think Congress does a very good job. The polls put Trump somewhere in the 40s, sometimes low 40s, sometimes high 40s. He kind of had a rally around the flag effect, a rally effect early in the coronavirus story, and he hit 50 or maybe 51%. But throughout that time, Congress's approval rating is like 15 or 20%. And it never goes above that. Never goes above about 20. Doesn't matter who the president is. So people think Congress does a lousy job, generally speaking. The polls show that people think Congress does a lousy job. And yet, they really seem to like their individual congressmen. They're the incumbents from their district. So people throughout Tom Gray's time as our congressman have felt like Congress was, doing a bad job, but he was doing a good job. They liked him. And so you have the little political cartoon that shows, in spite of the fact that, Congress itself has a 15 or 20% approval rating, the people in office, these are called incumbents, they have a 90 or 95% approval rating. I think in the House of Representatives, like 95%, the Senate's like 85 or 90%. So, that's a real paradox, right? Everybody thinks the Congress is a bunch of no good crooks, but our guy's good. So how is that? How is it that the individual congressman managed to stay so popular whereas Congress as a whole has a terrible reputation. So we're looking at that today. A lot of reasons for that. It's an interesting story, kind of troubling story in certain ways. So here we go. We're just going with reason number one. The name you know. If you voted, if you go in and you vote, in November, hopefully all this stuff will be behind us. And we can go in and we can vote in person. We'll see a ballot. You'll know the names Trump and Biden. Vast majority of y'all are going to be voting for Trump, based on our political breakdowns, our little informal surveys that we took. But then below Trump and Biden, you'll have a congressional race and then a state legislator race and then local races. And what you find, what I've always found when I went in to vote, is I know about the races at the top, and as it goes further down what's called the ticket, the ballot, I have no idea who a lot of these people are. And I study this stuff for a living. So who the heck am I supposed to vote for? So a lot of times people vote for the name they've heard. And generally speaking, whoever the challenger is, they hadn't heard of that person, but the person in the office, Tom Graves, been around for a while. We've seen his name in the paper. You've heard of him somehow or another. So you think, oh gosh, I think I've heard of this guy. He must be okay. I'll try to send a little scene, a little snippet on YouTube from an old movie from the 90s. I think it was made in the 90s called The Distinguished Gentleman. But it's based on this. It's based on this fact. Like Eddie Murphy in this movie is this guy just got laid off. He's talking to his buddy and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. This was a good job. I don't think I can get a good job as good as I had. And his buddy says, I know what you need to do. You need to run for Congress. And Eddie Murphy's going, what are you crazy? I don't know anything about that. Why would I run for Congress? And he says, the guy who's been our congressman for 10 years is named Jeff Johnson. That's your name. You have the same name as the guy who's been in Congress all these years. Nobody's going to know the difference. And so, he does it. And his campaign slogan is Jeff Johnson, the name you know. And it shows him like going around campaigning on that slogan, the name you know. And then he gets elected and, kind of what's like if the common man, goes to Congress. But the premise of the movie is a fact. People vote for names that they know, and they've seen these names in the paper or on the radio or something. So just the fact of name recognition really helps. Okay, second thing that people do is something called constituent service. Tom Graves will help you with your problems. If your grandmother doesn't get her Social Security check, you can call Tom Graves' office and he'll look into it for you. If you haven't if you hadn't determined where you're going to college yet, you can ask Tom Graves to write you a recommendation. He'll do it. Now he doesn't know you. The letter he writes for you is going to say, I've never actually met this person, but here's his qualifications, here's her qualifications. But our congressmen, one of their jobs is to serve their constituents. They do things for us if we ask them. And it doesn't matter if they're Democrats, Republicans, doesn't matter your politics. They'll help you with governmental problems. Long ago, back in the 90s when I was getting out of college, I was an intern for a senator. A guy's name was Sam Nunn, my senior year of college, summer before my senior year of college. And my job was to sign letters. I had with his name, he had thousands of letters coming to him. And he had people working for him, sending these letters out and also sending letters to government agencies saying, hey, this person's having this problem. And my job was to hold the letter under his pen signing machine. They had programmed his signature into a machine. And in between where it said sincerely and Sam Nunn, or if it's a letter going back to the constituent, it was going to be personal, so it said sincerely Sam. And I had to hold it in the right place, hit this pedal, and it would sign his name. And so, people who had contact with Sam Nunn's office would say, hey, they're a bunch of crooks, but I had this problem. I went to Sam Nunn, and, hey, he helped me out. Now, he's a good guy. And so that's just kind of the way it works for all of them. They all do favors for people who live in their districts. They help their constituents, and they all do it. Doesn't matter their political leanings. Okay, franking. Your frank is your signature. It's kind of like a John Hancock's another name for it. And congressmen get free mail. So they can just send out letters telling everybody in the district what a great job they're doing right up until 3 months, 90 days before the election. So their signature, their frank, is the same thing as a stamp. So whereas we got to, buy a stamp when we send a letter, they can do it for free. So that's just unlimited mail they can send out to everybody saying, hey, just kind of advertising what a great job they're doing. All right, next thing is they've got a lot of money. Interest groups, we've done interest groups, have these financial wings called PACs, stands for Political Action Committees. And they make donations to people running for office. And it's almost always, and again, it kind of doesn't really matter the ideology, they almost always donate to the people in office. Because it's just kind of a chicken egg thing. Who are you going to donate to? Well, the person's going to win. Who's going to win? Well, the person gets all the money. So these political action committees, generally speaking, will donate to incumbents, hoping that will get them, doesn't guarantee the incumbents to do what they want, but to get them access to them. It costs a lot of money. It costs $500,000 to run for the House, $2.5 million to run for the Senate. And so what happens is, the people in office have a lot more money than the challengers. Generally speaking, a donation to a challenger is wasting money because he's going to lose. So there's, the people in office have a lot more money to run for office, and then they can run more ads on TV, on the radio, make more signs, put them in more yards, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, the next one is called credit claiming. The next thing they do, if something goes well, when the coronavirus ends, congressmen all over the country are going to be saying, look at what we as Congress did. And I'm not saying any of them are doing a bad job. We're all doing the best we can. But when everything, prior to coronavirus, congressmen all over the country have been able to say, hey, look how good the economy is. Look what a good job we've done. So if something goes well, the people in office say, hey, we did it. Doesn't matter if they did it. Doesn't matter if they had anything to do with it. Doesn't matter if they support the legislation that went into this achievement. Nobody knows what, nobody bothers to pay attention to how somebody voted. So if something goes well, they just claim credit for it. There's a lively debate about whether the good economy up until the coronavirus had more to do with Obama or with Trump, but both of them claim credit for it. So Congress people do that. All right, position taking is the next one. If a congressman is in a conservative area, they're going to say, look, I'm pro-life on abortion. We need to end abortion. If a congressman is in a liberal area, they're going to say, look, I'm protecting a woman's right to choose. So they're just going to take these positions. It's not really up to them whether or not abortion is legal. It's more up to the Supreme Court, right? But they're going to take popular positions in these districts, and people are going to say, hey, look, our guy's out there fighting for me. It's those other guys not doing what we want. He's out there fighting for me. They have themselves filmed on C-SPAN making speeches, passionate speeches on behalf of some issue. You'll notice when you watch the speech on C-SPAN that the camera's always zoomed right in on them. If it was to zoom out, you would see they're making a speech to an empty chamber. Nobody else is there. And they all do it. Maybe there's 5 or 10 other people in there. But they make these speeches, and they send the tapes of them making the speeches out to the districts. And then, look, if something's going well, they're going to claim credit for it. Something's going bad, hey, they're fighting to fix it. And they'll send us letters and advertise how they're fighting to fix it. All right, pork barrel projects. I'm going to make a pig sound. All right, snorting like a pig. Pork barrel projects are projects that are set aside for Congress members' districts. So you get a bridge in Gordon County built, a new wing to Advent Hospital, a new school, the central office gets built. Something gets built, something's done, money gets spent by the federal government here in our district. And so they call it pork because, the congressman is bringing home the bacon is where the phrase comes from. But, a congressman, when he runs for office, can say, look, while I been serving you, this got done here in Gordon County. It's going to be on and when the new road, bridge, whatever gets built, it's going to be on the front page of the paper, and there's going to be Tom Graves or whoever At a ribbon cutting ceremony, he's got a pair of scissors in his hand. He's smiling for the picture, and you think to yourself, well, hey, our guy's a pretty good guy. Look what he got done for us. So that's called pork barrel product. Also, it kind of drives up this pork is kind of added to bills as an amendment a lot of times, kind of drives up spending. All right. So there's just the re-election rates. What does it say? For the House, 94%. 2016. Look at that. 2016, when Trump is getting elected, and to drain the swamp. Well, in the swamp, 98% of people in the House are getting reelected. In the Senate, 93% of senators are getting elected. 80% for governors. So I mean that's pretty amazing, isn't it? You know, this is this period in which everybody just said they were just so mad. Everybody's getting reelected. Okay, the next is experience. The next advantage that they have is experience. And so, if you were a Democrat, would you run against Tom Grace? Well, he can say he's got a lot more experience than you have. And the only way you get experience is by getting elected. So, you have this, like, political scientists call somebody a quality candidate if they've served in office before. Quality candidates don't run against incumbents. They wait until there's a new election. It's called an open seat with no incumbents. And then they'll run. All right. And so incumbents just have a lot more experience than inexperienced challengers, and so they can make that argument. Okay, so those are the advantages. And notice what we got. It's a list of 8. So it's 2 with names. So it's name recognition and franking. All right, and then this is kind of gross, right? That we think they're doing a lousy job and we keep reelecting them. So it's EC, like EEC, this is gross. So experience, constituent service, credit claiming, and then 3 Ps. PAC money, pork money, and position taken. Position taken, taking the popular position. I almost forgot that third P there. Okay, so I'm going to take a breath. And there it is. Okay, so the second thing, there's another advantage. There's going to end up being 9 advantages. We've done the first 8. 9th one is just a little bit more complicated, so we're going to take a whole heading to explain it. Most seats in Congress are safe seats. I believe those are, it's all the light blue and light red seats on my little graph there. They're all safe seats. They're the ones that the incumbents like 75-25, Democrat, Republican, or Republican, Democrat. The person in office is just sure to win. A competitive seat is one that either party could win. And out of the 435 House seats, about 100 of them so what's that, about 20%? Are competitive seats. Some seats are competitive every now and then when somebody retires. So, nobody's quite sure who's going to replace Tom Graves. It's going to be a Republican. It's not going to be a Democrat, but that's a competitive seat at the moment. But about 80% of the seats are safe seats. Okay. Well, every 10 years, Congress does something called reapportioning. The government counts everybody. That's happening this year. It's going to be kind of a challenge. It is kind of a challenge right now. But the government counts everybody. All right. And so then they come up with a population. Right now, the population, I think, is 330 million. But some states growing faster than other states. Texas, great state of Texas, growing faster than any other state. They never really had a housing crisis. Got cheap land down there. It's the Sun Belt, low taxes. Texas really, really growing. Rust Belt states tend to be shrinking. There's not any states that are actually shrinking, but they're not growing nearly as fast as a state like Texas is. So the result is a state like Texas and Florida here adds a few states, and these states up here in the red lose some seats. All right. So after it's determined how many seats, how many congressional districts the state's going to have after the census, after the reapportionment, the majority party in the state government redistricts. So in Georgia, the Republican Party will redraw. It could be that Georgia, maybe adds another, at the end of this, after they've done it all, Georgia add another congressional seat, and we'll have like 15 instead of 14. So then they'll have to redraw the district lines. All right. Okay. That's where it gets really kind of interesting, because these districts end up having funky shapes. I mean, look at look at these districts in Georgia. It's not a grid. I mean, look at that district right there. It's almost shaped like I would expect I think it's probably a Republican district, and it's shaped like an elephant head. Now, it's not because they're trying to say the Republican is the elephant party. All right, but I mean, just look at the shape of these things. All right, so they're not a grid. It's not a square. And so it's called gerrymandering after a guy named Elbridge Gerry way back at the beginning of our country's history. I mean, I believe he signed the Constitution. And in New York, he drew this district that people said looked like a salamander. To me, it looks more like a dragon. So they called it gerrymandered district. So any kind of funky shaped district is called a gerrymandered district. And it's allowed. Can you do that? You can draw it any shape you want, as long as the whole thing's connected. The fancy word for connected is contiguous. So you can't put one part of the district down here and one part of the same district up here. But, this little elephant trunk can run all the way up here and still be part of the same district as long as it's connected. All right. So, I mean, I don't know. If this is a Republican district, I would say Republicans decided that they needed like this little section of Republicans right here to make sure it was Republican. If it's a Democratic district, they needed maybe this. If it's a Democratic district, they want to make sure, Republicans want to make sure this one was Republican, so they just kind of took the Democrats out of that district and put it in here. All kinds of motivations go into the shapes. But it's designed to generally benefit the political party, but that tends to benefit the incumbent as well. Okay, there's a couple of little court cases that go along with this. One is Baker versus Carr, and you would think that this gerrymandering, this redistricting doesn't have that much to do with race, but race is always involved. Race always lurks close by in political questions. So it was a 1962 case, and Tennessee hadn't redistricted for 60 years. And so the result was you had cities like Nashville and Knoxville and Chattanooga and Memphis that had a lot of people in it. And then like rural areas that didn't have so many people, and the rural district would get a vote and Memphis would get a vote. So the district, the urban district, would be kind of geographically the same size as the rural district, even though the rural district had a lot less people. And so the Supreme Court ruled in 1962 that congressional districts have to be the same size population-wise. I believe they got to have somewhere around 625,000 people, 600,000 people, something like that. All right, so if it's a rural area, it's going to be a lot bigger land area than an urban area is. All right, but Tennessee's system was declared unconstitutional. That's Baker versus Carr. All right, you can pause this. It gives a little synopsis of it. Then there's another court case. It's almost the opposite. In 1993, North Carolina gerrymandered this district, and I think it's this purple one right here. Came up on Google Images, and here's like a diagram of that district, and it really kind of does look like a salamander, doesn't it? All right, and it turned out the reason North Carolina did it was to make sure that they had a district that had an African American representative. And so they just kind of found all the African American areas of all these different places. And I mean, it was connected, but the court ruled that really the only reason for this shape was to get a bunch of African Americans in one district. And that race can't be the only factor in redistricting. So, I mean, both of these in certain ways were redistricting gerrymandering cases. Okay. So that's the non-advantage. So you add, if you add gerrymandering to it, so you go back up there, boom, boom, boom. So see if you can do it again. So name recognition, franking, experience, credit claiming, constituent service, position taking, PAC money, port money, gerrymandering. Those are the 9. Okay. And then the 2 court cases, Baker versus Carr, one person, one vote, and Shaw versus Reno, race can't be the only motivation for the shape of a district. All right. So my next question to you is just kind of an opinion question, doesn't matter, and you kind of want to think about that. All right, as we look at the next 2 headings right here. All right. So I tell you what, I don't think that is the next question. The next question is, well, if 95% of them get reelected, how does somebody ever lose? All right, and so this is why somebody would lose. All right, and so one issue is going to be a tough vote, a tough issue. There's going to be some people. Well, there was a couple of Doug Jones in Alabama. A Democrat in Alabama voted for impeachment. You know, that might do him in Alabama. Mitt Romney, a senator, Republican senator, voted to convict Trump in Utah. That might be a challenge for him. So a controversial vote can wreck a career. This lady here is named Blanche Lincoln. Look at her. I mean, she's just kind of, to me, she looks like a Congress lady with just a bright future ahead of her. I mean, she just looks smart. And she's pretty young for a congressperson, so she could have a long career. She was from Arkansas. She voted for Obamacare. She's not in Congress anymore. So, you know, that vote for Obamacare in 2008 just did her in. All right, a second thing that does it, scandal. All right, if there's a big scandal, a lot of times congressmen, congress ladies have to retire. If there's a big scandal. You know, Trump kind of weather scandals. Sometimes Clinton national politicians can handle scandals better than Congress people have. But a scandal can ruin a career. Okay. Let's go this one. And then we'll go back. All right, third reason that Congress wouldn't get reelected midterms. The president's party does badly in midterms. We don't have... Well, this only goes up to W, but I mean, Obama's midterms were awful for the Democrats, just awful. And then Trump's midterm in 2018, you know, the Republicans lost something like 30 seats, which is about the average. You know, it was about that. Generally speaking, the president's party loses about 30 seats in the House of Representatives. The only exceptions, if you look at our chart, up here, Bush after 9/11, he was so popular after 9/11, the Republicans picked up seats, and Clinton in 96, 98 picked up a few seats because people were mad at the Republicans about impeachment. So generally speaking, some incumbents will lose during the midterms. Not as many people vote during the midterms, and so the people who do vote tend to be mad at the president. So somebody got brought into office called on the president's coattails. You know, got elected at the time the president got elected, but kind of in a competitive district, people get mad at the president. That person's going to have a hard time getting reelected. All right, so that's 3 reasons. A tough vote somebody takes, a scandal, and the midterms are a challenge. Okay, so then we go back here. When Congress people are trying to decide how to vote on a particular bill, there's 5 influences. All right, parties of big-time influence. What other party people think? Log rolling is when they kind of trade votes with other members of the party. Maybe one issue is really important to them and another issue is really important to like another member of their party, so they'll kind of trade votes. They try to do what their constituents want. So they're gonna vote with their constituents. They're gonna it's called being a delegate, taking the popular position. You know, also they look at what the polls say. Is this a popular vote? You know, you generally don't see, it's a risky thing to do an unpopular vote. Interest groups push them in one way or another. You know, Republicans not going to really buck the NRA. Democrats probably not going to buck pro-choice groups on issues having to do with abortion anyway. And then sometimes, you know, I'm not going to say rare occasions, but it's not the majority of the time, they're just going to do what they think is right, regardless of whether or not it's popular. John McCain was famous for this. He called himself a maverick. He's going to vote what he thinks is right, not what, you know, the people want him to do. This is a lady named Olympia Snow in Maine. She's a Republican in Maine, and she's kind of notorious for kind of doing her own thing. All right. I'm not going to do that one. Don't worry about that caucus thing. Don't worry about the first two of them. So I don't like my questions here. So you need 5 influences on a person's vote and 3 challenges. 3 challenges, 3 reasons somebody might lose. So a tough vote, a scandal, and the midterms, and then the 5 influences. All right, I'm gonna. Those first 3 questions don't have anything to do with anything, so don't worry about that. I'm gonna breathe. All right, and we'll do the last one then. All right, this was a book I might have shown you, and so if you talk to kind of the armchair follower of politics, you know, it's kind of knows that everybody doesn't really like each other. Hey, maybe, you know, and maybe coronavirus is pulling us together in certain ways. I read a really nice article about that today. And hey, if everybody's house is still standing, you know, if we're still in decent shape, and the internet works and everything in the morning, I'll try to send that article. I really, really like that article. You know, talking about how, you know, in certain ways we're kind of rising, the nation's kind of rising to the occasion with the social distancing and coronavirus. All right, but before that, a lot of people would say, well, gerrymandering is really the problem because that really divides. You know, these funky district shapes create situations where it's a district's going to be 80% Republican or 80% Democrat. Then they don't have any incentive to compromise with each other. All right. So there's this book I read called The Big Sword. I may have showed it to you. But it says it's not really the politicians that put us in these bubbles where we're all people who kind of think just alike and never see people that think differently than us. It's us that, you know, if you move to a rural area, you know that you're moving to a Republican area. And if you move to an urban area, you know that you're moving to a Democratic area, to a liberal area. And so people move to communities, not for the politics, generally speaking. You know, if you want to move to an area that's got a lot of farmland and pickup trucks and, you know, we're not too close to your neighbors, well, you just kind of know the politics that goes with it. And if you want to move to a place that's got public libraries and lots of things to do on the weekend and so forth, you kind of know the politics that goes with that. All right. And so we moved to communities that seem attractive to us, and over time, we sorted ourselves into really, really ideologically homogeneous places. So there's there's the contrast. You know, they got parks, public transportation, a lot of Starbucks. You know, it's going to be a liberal area. A lot of churches, a lot of pickup trucks, a lot of farmland. It's going to be a Republican area. And so then there's the question, well, why does it matter? Does it matter? And, I mean, there's just lots and lots of research that says if you hang out with people who agree with you all the time, it tends to intensify each other's opinions. You know, you look back at the old films of like segregationists and you listen to them talking and you think to yourself, well, how could they have been that way? Well, it's because they were around people that thought like them and they just kind of egged each other on in certain ways. And so, you know, we just make ourselves, I think we still use that word more, the part of the teenage lingo, we make each other more extra by hanging out with each other, with people, and getting on, social media with people who are like us. All right, and so the effect of it is one more thing that is a danger for congressmen: compromise. And I need to put that on there. You hold on to your job as long as you never compromise with the other side. So generally speaking, what do we say? I mean, it's really interesting. We hate Congress. Why? Because they never compromise. Polls show we wish Congress would compromise. We love our congressmen. Why? Because they never compromise. Because we live in 80% Republican districts or 80% Democrat districts. If a Republican did something that was mildly liberal, he would get primaried. He'd be challenged in the primaries by someone more conservative than him. If a Democrat did something that was mildly conservative, he or she would be primaried. He'd be challenged in the primaries by someone more liberal than her. So if you're not a fan of Nancy Pelosi and you say, well, why did Nancy Pelosi do that? The answer might be in order to hold on to her job. If she had said, maybe we ought to just censure Trump. What he did wasn't good, but it may not be a high crime and misdemeanor. Maybe we ought to just do a censure. She might have lost her job, because she would have gotten challenged in San Francisco by a Democrat more liberal than her. Whether it's the self-sorting that we're doing or the gerrymandering, it creates this situation where our leaders have absolutely no incentive to compromise with each other. And so it might be a noble thing every now and then to compromise, but it's also political suicide. No job. You better be ready to go into another line of work like Blanche Lincoln. Nothing there. One more thing to say about it. Decisions. History shows that decisions tend to be worse if you have this thing groupthink. Kennedy at the Bay of Pigs, if you know that story, tried to invade Cuba. It was a big disaster. Johnson in Vietnam. In each case, these two guys had advisors just telling them they were right the whole time. Nobody really questioning. Nobody in the group saying, this may not be a good idea. On the other hand, Lincoln during the Civil War had a cabinet made up of completely people thought they were smarter than Lincoln, and so they were continually challenging him. And so it's kind of a lively debate as to how to handle the decisions Lincoln had to make. And Kennedy in the Cuban Missile Crisis made sure to have a really diverse group of people they was talking to during this 13 days to try to make sure he kept us out of a nuclear war. So diversity is not just political diversity. Is not just good for like kumbaya moments. Hey, can't we all get along? But also it makes for better decision making than if everybody just agrees and nobody really questions the basic assumptions that people are making. Okay, is that it? Yeah, that's it. That's it, isn't it? Yep, that's it. Okay, what do you think? I think that lasted 40 minutes. Hopefully it took.